which means I grind, my platform is set at 25 degrees so that I grind each side at 25 degrees.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
that seems to work really well.
Are there any plans to pick up boxes from this area that are already made? I'm still sitting on a couple of them I did early or late last winter. Get them
Bruce?
down to you, Bruce, or to the hospital. Is there...
Since the COVID thing happened, I've burned about two tanks of gas since the middle of March. So I'm not going many places. But if you interact with Doug at all, if you get them to Doug's place, that's a lot closer for me. I don't know if you do or not.
Are you delivering them to the hospital still? Have they opened that back up, or you're still just sitting on them?
It's been about a month now that I delivered 30 to them.
Okay.
They actually ran out and decided to take a risk on me bringing bugs in.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, until we're bringing.
I'd be willing to. I was going to say I'd be willing to do. I kind of have business in Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo. One of my kids recently got a house in Kalamazoo, so I'm back and forth between both cities quite a bit, or can be. I have an excuse to get down there, so if you want, I could also do that.
You can get a hold of Dave Curley. Yeah, you can. He can deliver those down to Bruce. I don't know if there's a high demand for it right now, though, if they're not accepting them at the hospital. But
I can wait if they don't need them. It just was, we're on that topic, so I was just asking the question.
Yeah. Right now I have about 25 in stock for the next delivery. So we're pretty good in terms of having some ready for the hospital, so you don't need to do special running around to get them down here.
Okay.
All
right, Tom Sampson, I hear you need to turn on your video on the for the Zoom room. Your Zoom on the thing, click on start video on the bottom left. Can you hear me, Tom?
Yeah, I can hear you. So I have the external on. What else am I have to do here?
In the Zoom room, I accidentally turned off your video, I think. You know, in the
the
actual
Zoom room,
Zoom,
okay.
go into Zoom, you got the mic and the video on the bottom left corner.
Gotcha.
Start the video.
Let me
There
we
you go.
go.
All right, yeah.
Yay!
All right, now you're on. Let me spotlight you, or if somebody could spotlight him.
I got him, Doug.
Okay, thank you. All right, you've got the floor there, Tom. Everybody, let's give Tom a big warm welcome.
All right, all hear me and see me good?
Yep. You look
right.
as good as you ever have. Yeah, beautiful.
Well, thank you. So I am here in Granville at garage for a company I work with. Have set up here they have a little larger compressor than I have at home. So I have equipment set up here. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a geologist by training. So I work for a company that does environmental cleanups and compliance. So, places like a gas station or, manufacturing companies that have issues with releases of chemicals or gasoline, we investigate, delineate and clean those up. So we have equipment that we would use in the field, like compressors and soil vapor extraction systems. So we're injecting air, we're pulling things out. So we have a lot of pipe fittings and things like that here too. So today I'm going to talk about sandblasting, kind of the process I've been incrementally going through to make that happen. Talk about some of the equipment, the processes, cabinets, guns, dust collection, safety, blasting itself. Got it the cabinet, and we'll set up a camera, excuse me, to look down into it and, kind of go through the process. And feel free to answer questions. I have these headphones on so I can hear pretty well. And then, we'll go from there. So I'm going to start out with some of the work that I do and kind of how I want to embellish with sandblasting. So let me switch cameras here. Okay, I'm not switching now.
Oh
Let's have
no.
the big. Oh, I got the big and small. All right, so kind of warping of wood seems to be of interest to a lot of people now. Certainly with the Madrone, which I haven't yet to work with, but I've been playing around with discs, thinly turned discs, which here's an example of red oak. And I call these my Event Horizon series. An event horizon in planetary geology is like in a black hole where there's a plane where nothing can, light cannot escape through. So if that reminds you of maybe was my intent. So again, red oak, turned thin on a pressure plate, just jammed into, cut with a chainsaw first, and then I would jam it onto a plywood disc and then turn it down. And then sequentially maybe holding it with smaller wooden discs so I don't perforate through. When these dry, they do kind of tend to crack in the middle. So, that's kind of one of the reasons I've been putting things in the middle. So here's a hollowed out sphere. And then I've, textured, painted, those kind of things to put these rays on. There we go. And then here's another example of two discs. Okay, kind of a Star Wars type looking spaceship, Darth Vader kind of thing, but same kind of concept, two discs. I have a hollowed out sphere and then a couple of nails in here to embellish right there. And then, so along those lines, I was playing around with the sandblasting part. Here's a broken piece. See if I can align that. There we go. And so the areas in between here have been sandblasted. Let me zoom in. Oops. Zoom in. So hopefully you can kind of see where the grain has differentially been eroded from the sandblasting. And then the same concept where the other areas are not sandblasted, painted, and or wood burned. So is that coming through?
Yes.
What's the wood, Tom?
This is another slice of red oak. You can kind of see the outer rim is a little bit not rusted, degraded, from rotting. There's some little bit of coloring there from rot. And here this was something I had on a kind of a tower structure, so it snapped at some point. Here's another example, a little bit better of just on a test piece. You can kind of see through the wood there. You can see some light coming through even. And again, this is red oak, a little bit bigger or wider spaced green, if you will. So from a larger tree, whereas the other ones are, you can see the diameter of the tree.
So did you sandblast that from both sides? The one we can see through?
I did. This was just, again, playing around. That maybe shows the light coming through a little better.
Yep. Okay.
Are there
Here,
are there other woods? Are there other woods that have that, I know oak does this pretty well. Are there other woods that are similar? Oak does it pretty well because you've got the growth rings raised.
You have the medullary rays that'll hold it together. If you, so you can, the medullary rays hold it together. They're a little bit stronger. So the softer wood preferentially gets blasted out, and then the harder wood stays, and the medullary rays. So some of you may have seen like Pascal Audet, a French turner. He does very nice. The whole thing is just lace work, which is some of the inspiration for what I'm doing here, but more of a doing patterns, if you will.
So on the backside, I have another question. On the backside of that one, did the sandblasting go around the metal, those rays? More of the ray on the backside, you can see the rays better. It looks like.
I think
it doesn't blast out those rays.
You're right. This is a little deeper, I think. Right here, it's penetrated. The blasting. I don't know if you can see my hand moving there.
Yeah. Okay.
So Tom, are you gonna talk about how you protected the areas that didn't get blasted, or should it be?
Yes.
No. Okay.
And I did not protect this at all, so it is kind of gradational. Again, this was just kind of a test piece. So there would have been no resist here, which I'll talk about later. So you can do things to protect an edge and get a very sharp edge, which we will do today. So other woods, that the grain differentially erodes when it's blasted. This is Douglas fir, and I don't know if that's coming through, but there's a lot of relief there. Some of these are maybe like right there's a 1/16 of an inch, I think, differentially eroded. So is that coming through?
Yes.
Okay. Whoop, sorry. So I'll tip it on edge. Maybe you can see how deep those valleys are. But yeah, so this is Douglas fir, and white pine I've been doing on too. That works pretty well. We'll do some white pine today. So that's kind of an example of, what I'm interested in and what I'm doing. As far as sandblasting itself, it's been very much a investigative process for me. I didn't know anything about it. I initially started, I'm a geologist, and kind of a twofold, a thought I had was, well, I can also clean up fossils with this. You can put other, different types of media that I'll be talking about, but you could clean up fossils. So that was one thing I was thinking of. And then I was, interested what I could do with sandblasting as far as wood, creative kind of concepts. So I'm just going to give you a scan of what I have here. So bear with me as we figure this out. So in the back is a Harbor Freight blasting cabinet, and we're going to talk about all these in sequence, but I'm just going to give you an overview of what's here. This is a little dust collection cyclone on the left-hand side here, my right. Shop vac down there. Over in the corner, whoops, I might have screwed up the focus. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, move back there by the compressor. You might have to walk back there and have it focus on you.
There we go. So we've got a compressor, which is woefully inadequate, and I'll talk about that, which led me then to find a auxiliary tank over here, which this is, since I have access to this type of equipment, this was just sitting around. It's just a big pressure tank, which I added on. So that allows me to build up extra pressure and volume, which is the main consideration here. So pressure tank, and then over here are some smaller type units. This is a a pressure pot, and I'll talk about that, and then also just a little spot blaster, that gray thing there. And I might as well, while we're here, I'll just, because it sounds like there's some interest in how this is set up, so I'm going to switch to my laptop. So if you want to highlight my laptop, my home,
Yeah, let me hang on. I'm trying to find it here.
see if you can find that.
Yeah.
So
Okay. There's your laptop. I spotted.
Okay, so just for everybody's interest, this is what the setup looks like. I'm looking at a laptop on a tripod, and then the camera and that's the main camera right up here, and then there's a camera on a boom here, which I'm shining down on a table, and that's where I was showing that artwork, and I have a bunch of stuff set up on the table I'll be putting under there. And then over here, there's a camera hooked up on a boom, and that's what I'm gonna, let's see here. Yeah, right there. So that's gonna be swinging over the cabinet here in a little bit. All right, you can switch me back.
Okay.
Any questions on that? Oh, and there's oh, yeah, I can hold it up. There's a little switching pad here. Oops. Yeah, so there's a little switching pad that you can switch the cameras around and zoom in and out.
Okay.
All right. So let's start with kind of different things out there and ask questions. And there might be people that know more than I do, because again, I've just been trial and error on a lot of this stuff. So I'm gonna zoom over on this pressure pot, which is the first thing I got. So this is just a cheap Harbor Freight, what they call a pressure pot. You fill it full of, your media, and then on the back side, sorry about this, a lot of stuff here. So your air line, you would hook up to here, and then the air goes to two locations. It goes to the top of the pot and then pushes down on your media, if you will. And then the other line there goes down to the bottom, and down on the bottom you can adjust the the airflow and the media coming out. Oop, right there. So there's a valve down there, and then one up, a couple on top. So it's kind of finicky from what I found. You would I used this outside first, and I didn't have the cabinet at the time. It works, it's a little finicky. If your media gets damp, it'll tend to clog up, and then it's really hard to get stuff out of there. But something you could use outside if you just wanted to give it a shot. Not too big of an investment. Comes with, this little shield you'd put on, because, that stuff really comes out of there fast, and it bounces all around, and it's kind of stings if you're not geared up for it.
And with that one, when you use it, you lose the sand. It flies all over you. You'd have to sweep it back up if you want to try and reuse it, as opposed to your cabinet.
Yeah, it was.
Your cabinet reuses the sand. You don't have to worry about. Right.
Correct.
That's big.
But you could put that into a cabinet too, I guess. So, the airline, if you ran a feed into your, if you ran into a cabinet, you could keep it. But yeah, I think it's probably a standalone device for the most part. You'd use outside, and you'd lose your media unless you put like a tarp out or something to collect it. Might be able to just hold this one up. I also tried this as just, again, another really cheap spot blaster, they call it. Again, Harbor Freight. you know, I'm honorary Dutchman, so I wasn't, you know, didn't want to pay much money to try this stuff out. It's still a siphon feed, so there's one tube coming out the bottom, and it would connect to a gun right there. So the air would be pulling a vacuum, if you will, a siphon, but it really helps if you have it up in the air. I didn't find this to work very well at all. And that's not to say that it doesn't. Maybe I just didn't know what I was doing either. So if anybody else has tried this stuff, I'd be interested to hear about it too. Any questions on those two? All right, I'm going to slide back to the cabinet then. See if I can zoom in here. Turn this light up there now. So this is, again, another cheap kind of item from Harbor Freight. It, I think it's like $130, maybe something like that. So a little more investment. It doesn't come with probably everything you would want to have. Here's, you put your arms in here, it's got a glass top. It's designed for this top to come off if you need to have something to protect your glass because it'll frost up if you're using glass media, for example, that's harder than the glass. If you're using something else that was softer, like soda or walnut shells, for example, you wouldn't have to worry about your glass frosting. So here's what comes with it. It's just and this is frosted up. This is a glass or a little plastic insert. So it's designed to, you'd have to take all these screws off to replace this, which is, as you can imagine, it's a pain in the butt. And the first time I did it, I cracked my glass trying to get it back on. So I had watched a Trent Bosch, so it's a very good sandblasting demo, and I watched that and I got the idea. He just tapes, this thing to the inside, which you can probably see here a little bit certainly when I switched to the boom. So anything, like a plastic, how you have the overhead projector, the old time, overhead projector things. That's kind of what these are now. I just have 3 of them taped together. So when it comes, it has openings. If I can rotate this. It's got let's see here. All right, so there's an opening here. You have to do all the fittings if you want to use it this way. So I have fittings coming in here for my airline. And then further back is, right there is an air inlet. So right there is where the air comes in, as you're pulling through. And then right here, I'm going to get this out of the way for a second. So right here, this hole is where you pull out for exhaust. And again, none of this, is included when you buy this. And I'm not advocating that you need to buy this. You can, build your own or do something else. But this is just, what process that I went through. So you definitely need dust extraction because number one, it just gets really cloudy in there, and you can't really see what's going on from all the broken up media, if you will, that's being thrown around. Number two is it's also a very good safety, to help you to stop breathing anything that's getting blown out of the cabinet. At first, I was thinking, I didn't have the dust collection, and I'll just caulk all the joints, and I looked at it and used it, and then you could see this dust cloud coming out. Like, well, I don't want to be breathing that, so dust collection is definitely a necessity.
So the dust collection only picks up dust; it doesn't pick up the sand, the media.
It probably not. I mean, if some bounced up there, it would go in the hole, I would imagine. But yeah, it does a really good job of pulling the dust off. And if you Google, on the internet, Harbor Freight dust collection or, cabinet modifications, there's everybody been doing all kinds of things. And that's kind of where I got this idea for the cyclone. So I'm going to go down here. And this is just, cyclone that'll pull the dust out, shoot it into the bucket. This is where the vacuum is pulled out from there to your whatever you have. In this case, it's a shop vac. So the one I bought is Chinese, so it's in metric, so it's not going to fit standard fitting. So that's why these pipe clamps are on here, rubber pipe clamps, just to make a good fitting. And I think I was even able to turn a piece of PVC that went into here pretty nice. So it's not even glued in there. It's just, sitting there. And also added the light then. So you need a light and at first, again, I tried this, and while I can't even see with the dust and no light, you can't see anything in there. So you definitely need to add light and dust collection. So there's kind of the cabinet in a nutshell. Now inside, all right, we'll get rid of. Okay, so there's the dust port going out. There's 2 rubber gloves in here, and then you can see the airline. You got to have a fitting on the inside to hook up your gun to. In this case, I've just put fittings on there so I could do quick connects. And there's a little screen, if you can see that. It's pretty flimsy, but it just allows you to put stuff on there. And then you can see the media in the bottom. In this case, it's crushed glass. And then there's a hole. I'm not going to show it, but there's a hole at the bottom that you can drain your media out and then put something else in if you want. Again, there's people that'll have stuff on the internet. You can put a quick valve on there so you can do it real quick. But in my case, I just have a cap on there. And then there's the door here that's got 2 clamps on it. I think you can see that. And so they just have a rubber seal on it to have it dust tight, if you will. So the only 2 real openings are that air inlet in the back and then the dust collection on the other side. All right. Any questions on cabinet so far?
Hey Tom, this is Tom Penning. I have just a couple suggestions. I've done a lot of sandblasting. One thing you have to do is make sure your air is really dry. So your typical little air dryer might not be good enough. And the second thing is you want to make sure you vent your shop vac outside and wear air breathing protection when you're doing it, because crushed glass is not good for your lungs.
Right, and I'll get into safety a little bit more here. Oop, am I?
Camera.
Sorry.
There you go.
I was just going to back up.
I'll,
I'm sorry. I'm just going to back up what Tom said, being an amateur astronomer and into mirror making. Several people in the mirror industry have died from silicosis from breathing in the glass particles. So very important to have extra protection.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And I would, I use this when I'm doing anything, which is, a face respirator. So it has, very good dust exclusion capabilities, and you have a good seal around your mouth. So I don't, something like an N95 mask isn't acceptable, I guess, in my mind. And then you're right, you can have a HEPA filter on your shop vac too. That would give you a little more, final dust removal, if you will. So, from a engineering control, if you can prevent anything from getting to you and not having to use a mask, that's the best way of going about it. So, dust collection, HEPA filters, vented outside, those are all very good ideas. All right. So moving on to airflow. This is a progression thing for me, and Tom Peninga, you can certainly jump in at any time, but airflow is the most, CFM is very important here. So how much CFM you get to your blasting cabinet, and the compressor I have is woefully inadequate. It's designed for 6.5 CFM. It looks fairly big for a shop. You might be very good for doing a lot of shop work. It still would be low for air tools, I would think, for air hammers. And I'm not focusing again.
Go back there and move the compressor. There it goes. Now it's there. It just needs you to get out of the picture.
I just need to get out of the way, don't I? So to get around that, and I'm in the process of maybe getting myself a bigger compressor, so that'll help out tremendously. But that's what led me to having this pressure tank, and I know everybody else wouldn't have this capability, but I happen to have the tank here, so it was no cost to me, another Dutch kind of thing. So this is probably a 60-gallon, air tank, and we would use it on air compressors for a treatment system again. So I'll just show you quickly how it's set up. It's kind of fun to play around with. I'm able to put it on a wheel so I can move it around. Over on this side here is where the air comes. Whoops, I'm sorry. The air comes in on this side from the compressor. I got a valve over there. Put a drop pipe on there to help, maybe get some moisture out. There's also another valve on the bottom to let air out of the tank. And then over on this side, I have a pressure gauge. See if you. Right. Okay, so right here is a pressure gauge. And then also something that maybe most people wouldn't have, but this is a flow meter, so I can get an idea how much CFM. I was kind of curious, well, what are you really getting? And I get about 5 CFM from that compressor, which is, and even with some of the modifications I've done, is still less than what it says it's capable of giving. So 5 CFM again is not going to get you very far. So what I'm showing you right now is not very adequate. So lessons, if you want to try this, just things to consider. What size of compressor do you use, Tom P?
Mine is 8, but I used to work for Progressive Blasting, and they had gazillions of cubic feet per minute. So
I would be jealous to have something like that. I did have a friend who had a larger one, and I brought some of the guns and stuff over there, and that was nice to use. Jeff Grill, I think, gets what, 10 or 12 if I remember right, and that worked better even than this one. So airflow is key, I think, to really be able to do this kind of stuff. You want something upwards of 15 CFM would be really, really nice. So as you'll, when I use this, it'll come down fairly quickly. So I get maybe a minute or two of blasting. So if you want to do anything, longer on your piece, it's not very adequate. So just doing these little details is kind of what I'm capable of doing right now.
Tom,
Yep.
the blast guns have a rating of CFM. And the reality is all you need to do is have the same amount in your compressor and you should be good to go. The problem is as you change the nozzles in the blast guns, it lets out more cubic feet of compressed air, and that's where you start running into trouble. But each blast gun, when you buy them, has a CFM rating. And as long as you have a compressor that'll produce that much, you're good to go.
Well, for example, this compressor, it only gives 5 CFM. So is rated for 6.5 from what I'm seeing. And I've added larger diameter stuff to the fittings. It just goes down really quickly. It just can't keep up. So the issue is CFM from the compressor, I think, for the most part. But you're right. I could see where whatever your gun's designed for, that's what it's going to let out. And I'll talk about that next here. So some of the things I did include, larger, well, let me
Didn't even know you left, babe.
show over to a hose here. This is a learning experience for me, but most of that stuff you buy is 1/4-inch hose, which it's not going to let much air through, as it turns out. So I upgraded them to half-inch hose. So I'll just zoom over to, let's see here. If I get out of the way, if it'll. Anyway, this hose here is 1/2 inch. We'll see if it comes into focus.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's not coming in. So that's 1/2-inch hose. So, that allows more CFM due to, line loss. Like a 1/4-inch hose is like I said, it's inadequate. All right, now I gotta get the, let me
Put
just,
something down there, it'll go to it.
yeah. All right. There we go.
There you go. There you go.
See if I can zoom in there. This is opposite, so you got to think opposite.
Yep, opposite.
So most of maybe what people are, and I did a little, where did I go here?
It's opposite. You went the wrong way.
Opposite world. So, and I'm maybe other people that can provide some more info on this, but most of what you might see in the big box stores, there's a whole host of different. These are air fittings. So what you connect to your hose, your guns. In my understanding, this is an industrial standard plug, and maybe the name might be Milton M. If anybody else wants to comment, they can. So this is like a 3/8 threaded fitting. This would be a male version. Here's a female version on this end. So standard industrial, air fitting. There's as it turns out, there's tons of these. Probably, everybody that invented one had their own. This is called a Lincoln plug, which I had floating around. I didn't really know what it was till I was reevaluating these. And here are two that I just got. They're called High Volume, or V, or Milton V. You can see that the holes are quite a bit bigger than this, your standard industrial plug. So these allow, I don't know how much, but you can see that volume there is way over twice the volume of that. So that really helped out on airflow in my case. These are aluminum, so they're very light. Probably most people are aware of how this works, but this is the other receiving end. So the male fitting, this is the male connector, and it's got some ball bearings in there and a ring. And when you pull back this sleeve, it allows you to push your fitting in there. Whoops, this is not, I need to use the standard one. So you push it in, close it up, and then that holds those rings in there. So you actually need, the female for this too, because this one, as you can see, doesn't fit. All right, any questions on that or more info from anybody?
I have a comment on those fittings. I worked a lot in coatings application on the automotive and interior business, and I used to do a lot of problem solving for HVLP guns in particular. And those fittings, the one you showed, the V, I think you called it a V, certainly would be better. But the more quick connects you have on a line, it'll step it down, and you'll lose volume over each one slightly. But if you have a lot of them in there, so I guess my point is use as few quick connects as possible to improve airflow.
Right, good point, because each time you go through here, you're going to restrict it, right? So, yeah. And which is why I started playing around with larger hose size and these fittings, so that as I, in between the fittings, if you will, I had as much airflow as I could get from the hose. All right. So moving on to guns. And again, my experience is from what I've got from Harbor Freight here. So if anybody else can add in, great. I'm gonna talk about what I have. I'm gonna get rid of me for a second. All right, so here's the 3 guns that I have. This is 2 trigger guns, and one of these came with this little spot blaster. I think it was this one, and this one came with the Harbor Freight cabinet, I believe. And this one came with the pressure blaster, and it's more of just a valve. So it's very hard to work. I was trying this in the cabinet, for example, and if you want to do stuff, you got to be going with 2 hands, pulling this valve. So it does not work well, in a cabinet situation. So it's kind of like on or off, but you gotta work that valve. So it's very simple. It's just, like a PEX fitting, almost a valve and a compression fitting. So there's not much to it. So I'm going to put that aside. This one is a trigger type gun. So you would have your air connect right down there. So this is your air fitting, and then your pickup tube for your media goes right on there. And I like this one because I can put different tips in there that I have, but it's something's happened and it doesn't work, so I need to take it apart and see if I can fix it. This is another trigger style. This is one I'm using today. So same process. Here's the trigger. Here's your air connection on the bottom. It has that purple high flow connection, and then excuse me, the pickup tube right here, which pulls the vacuum through a venturi action pulls the media up into here. I have a band clamp on here, but if you have a ring clamp or something, probably a little cleaner look, if you will. And the tips on this one, again, this is from Harbor Freight. I'm just going to pull that out. These are a little different. They have, you can buy them with different orifice volumes in them. You can see these two are fairly similar. I think a smaller volume is probably better for the work, for this type of, art type work. Excuse me. Let me get a drink here. So to me, this hole might be a little big. Does anybody else have a comment on that? Here are some of the other ones that go in that other gun, and you can see I can get, this one is like 1/8 of an inch. So I think that's a good size with the grit that, where I'm using crushed glass. So just there's an example of different ceramic pieces, tips. All right. Any questions on guns and tips? So the other part of this then is the pickup part. So I'm going to switch to me. Oops, got sand coming out. So these work by basically, okay, here we go. Picking up the media through a port and then from a vacuum or venturi action, pulling the grit up and out through the gun. So that air rushing past, the inside the gun, it's gonna create a vacuum and pull the grit up. So the other part of it is you need to have some type of airflow down to the pickup area. That's why this is homemade, but a two-piece part. Here's where the grit comes in, and then there's actually holes drilled in this. Get out of the light here. Internally, so the air comes down, and then up. Air comes down, goes through a hole into here, and then goes back up into the gun. Well, the one that came from Harbor Freight was kind of like two cylinders together, right? So one pipe that was smaller, a little bit smaller, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I actually had it on so tight that I blocked off the outer ring, and I wasn't getting any air. So to figure that out took a little while. And again, something looking online, figuring it out. This, people had the same problem with those pickup tubes. So I was gonna take the one that I got from Harbor Freight, and so I took it apart, and then I went to weld it together, and I actually melted through. So that's why I ended up abandoning that and making this copper one. So again, this is what you need to have a pickup tube. Any questions on that? All right, I'm going to move on to media here.
Tom, I just want you to know you're not by yourself.
Yeah,
I'm not by myself.
No, we're all here with you, even though nobody's talking.
We're just quiet as mice.
You're enthralled, I'm sure, right?
We're busy taking notes.
Yeah, well, there's a lot here, and if this will hopefully give people an idea of what's involved if you want to give this a try, if you've never done it before. It is involved. So mostly what I have here, I got again from Harbor Freight at first. And then I'd heard, through like Rudy Lopez, I was talking to him a little bit. And then Trent Bosch, I watched his presentation, and seems like crushed glass is the way to go. It gives you the best, thing for this art type of sandblasting. But I'm gonna go through kind of what I have and what the uses might be. So I first tried, and I know people will cringe at this, but I just bought some, white sand. So they warn you about, using sand for sandblasting, but I did it outside, and I even had a fan blowing, away from me, and I had my respirator on. So, I felt pretty good and, and safe, but, they recommend now using white sand. So you can see how fine that is.
Camera.
Oh, sorry. Probably wondering what I'm doing, huh? Okay, so white sand, you can see how fine that is. And then for fossil polishing, I tried some of this walnut grit media, if you will. So there's walnut grit, and that's, it's not going to work for wood, but just another media that's out there. I think people use it for polishing brass, for example, in tumblers. But I tried it out for polishing rocks, fossils, if you will. So also out there from Harbor Freight is aluminum oxide, which is black. Okay, right there. And I tried this, and it first thing that happened is it's black and it sticks to the wood, which at first you're like, well, that's not what I want, but actually it differentially sticks in the softer stuff. So if you have, you can actually accent the wood with using that, because it'll stick and have, the soft areas will be darker black, if you will, and then the light, the harder areas will not absorb it. So it could be used as an accent kind of blasting.
Tom, the walnut looks pretty coarse. Do you have to have a special nozzle for that?
Well, it is coarser, definitely coarser than the sands. This just to put a nozzle there. I mean, it's still a lot smaller than the nozzle, so you can use it. I'll just leave that there maybe. All right, I'm gonna move up here. Also, I got some glass beads from Jeff Grill, and when we tried that out. So those are glass beads as opposed to cut glass or ground glass. I'll zoom in here. I guess you can't really see much of a difference, but they're beads, so they're round, so they're not as aggressive as like sand or the grit, the aluminum carbide or the crushed glass.
Can you get all these media from like Harbor Freight, or you have to shop around to get these?
You can get the walnut, the walnut and the aluminum oxide from Harbor Freight. The sand I just got from like Menards and a play sand kind of thing. The glass beads you'd have to buy somewhere. I don't know where Jeff got his beads. That's where this came from. That's more of a specialty type media, but a lot of this stuff you can just go online, and there's blasting supply companies out there that'll sell you anything you want. Here's the crushed glass then. So this has a little sharper edges to it, a little more aggressive than the beads. And, from what I've seen, it seems to work pretty well. The other thing I've heard of is something called, what's it called? Black Beauty, which is like a ground slag, and I think it's comparable and even more aggressive than this crushed glass because it would have sharper edges on it. And there's also garnet out there, which is a mineral, so it'd have sharper edges, maybe a little more aggressive than the glass I've heard. Probably not as durable, like I'm not sure. I haven't used it, so. And then soda. Harbor Freight sells soda, which would be a lot softer, and that's more of a polishing, type compound like the walnut. It would just use it maybe for doing fossils in my case, or if you wanted to polish metal, you might put that on there to get a high sheen on something. All right, so that's grits. Any questions on the grit?
Tom,
Okay.
I was just going to mention that some of those grits you can get in a different sizes too. So like glass bead, you can get in a variety of sizes.
Yeah, if you look on the website that's selling this stuff, it would, there's all kinds of sizes and choices. So, just to give you the size of the crushed glass, I got it here somewhere. So let's see here. This one is the crushed glass, and I bought that on Amazon. It came in a 5-gallon bucket. It's called the sieve size is 25 to 40. If that, anybody can picture that if you're a geologist. And I think the micron size was somewhere in the 400 microns, maybe 100 to 400, something like that. Ballotini is the name of the company, I believe. And that's something I learned watching Trent Brosh's video. I can put that in an email if somebody's interested. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, sorry. Get on to some blasting here.
Yeah, we want to see some chips flying.
You want to see some action, don't you?
Yes, we're ready for some action.
So, open grains are going to be your best type of wood, something that has a strong grain, and then certainly softer wood and harder wood. So it's going to differentially, excavate that softer wood. I like, playing around with the end grain. So that's mostly what I've done, but you can do anything on a side of a vase, for example, or a bowl. And then we'll get into here talking about resists and how to mask things off. But here is just a thin slice of red oak. So we're going to go ahead and blast this. Let's just show you how thin it is. This side I had turned smooth and it had cracked, so I'd kind of given up on it. This side was cut with I think on the bandsaw, and I blasted this side the other day, so you can see kind of how it's relieved already. So I'm gonna put that in there, and we'll blast the smooth side. So I'll get set up for that. I'm gonna switch to my top camera now. So this is gonna be looking inside the cabinet, and I'll try the best to get a good view for you.
And then move it towards the back, maybe. And at the front of the cabinet, I think. You're going to be working.
Let's see, I'm gonna just put my hand in here so I know it's. All right, so about right there. Okay, that looks pretty good. So there's the piece. So you can kind of see I've jammed that siphon tube down into the media, and the gun is connected up to the airline here. Close up the cabinet. I'm gonna turn the dust collector on, so it might be loud for a little bit, but I have the compressor off. So here we go. What, did that come through?
Yeah. Yep, we heard it.
Keep that closed real quick. All right, so there's kind of the effect. You can kind of see through a little bit. Is that coming through?
Yep.
All right.
So Tom, you were using crushed glass. Is that true?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
You were using the crushed glass for that blast?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Do you find that that cuts the wood quicker than the aluminum oxide?
I would say they're somewhat comparable, though again, like I said, it would stick. You know, if I had done this with the aluminum oxide, it'd be sticking in there. And then same with silicon carbide, which if you're familiar with that from rock, if you own a rock polisher, you probably have, you know, silicon carbide, and the same thing. You know, it cuts pretty well, but it sticks in the wood, and you can see it, how dark it is. So there's probably, you know, crushed glass stuck in here. You just can't see it because it blends in, would be my guess.
Yeah, that's really dramatic though. I mean, you only took a half a minute to do that.
Yeah, and this is thin, so, you know, it's gonna happen pretty quickly. All right.
Tom, what effect does the debris that you're blasting out of there is mixing with your media? Does that eventually have to be changed, the whole hopper full, or what?
Yeah, good question. And I learned this from watching Trent Bosch's video or presentation. You know, that's a good reason for the dust collector, because all that's getting kicked up. And if you didn't have the dust collection, you know, like you said, you'd have all this wood would be getting into the grit. So, you know, that dust collection pulls it out and should end up in that bucket there.
It looked like you had a 90-degree angle of attack on it. If you were to come from an angle or something, would there be a different effect? Would it allow you to get under the medulla rays of the wood, or? Not sure. You know, I guess I haven't done. You know, I think you're trying to get as much
excavation as you can. So, you might have if you have a lot of relief, I could see where it might cut off the front side and not the back. But I think overall you're just hoping for more excavation on that softer wood would be my take on it.
So you usually use the crushed glass mostly? Is that your favorite? Your preferred?
Yeah,
method?
I think the crushed glass works the best. Yeah.
Okay.
From what I've seen.
And where do you get that from? You bought that from Amazon? 5-gallon
I
bucket?
just, yep. And, if somebody's really interested, I got, you don't use much. So I'm willing to sell some to someone else if they don't want to buy a bucket. So I might save some cost there too. But yeah, you get a 5-gallon pail that weighs 50 pounds. So be prepared to move it around when you get it. I don't have the best back anymore, so.
So don't ask you to move our bucket of sand around?
No. All right, any questions on the initial blast? Well, I got some other things to do. So I'll just kind of play around with different ways of, what can you do? Let's see here. So I was just playing around with this the other day. This is a big thin thing I tried to make. Oh, there we go. And I did this last night just to practice. So we'll see if we can do this again today. So I would burn this first, and I'm going to show you that real quick because it's kind of neat, the effect you have on the wood. For those of us interested in thin things and moving your wood around, when I hit this with a torch, it starts moving. So it's kind of giving me some ideas on, playing around with that. So I got a torch here. Okay. There we go. My idea here is to, make the background black, if you will, from the burning, and then we'll put some resist on there to give us a pattern. So that's what I'm up to here. All right, so I'm just gonna burn this a little bit. And so it's starting to curl towards me, which is kind of neat. We'll do the other side. Kind of neat that there's still some turning marks on there. They're showing up. All right, I was trying not to set that on fire because it's so thin. I'm going to switch over to the side just to see if that comes. See how it's kind of started to bend there. Oh, that's kind of neat stuff. All right, so here's my test piece, if you will. And now I'm going to talk about resist. All right, so I got a little piece of, it's basically a rubber mat, and it's got adhesive inside of it with a little plastic coating like that. So I can just cut whatever shapes I want out. This is about, looks like it's less than the 16th for sure. Maybe a 60, little bit thicker than the 64th. So I understand there's a lot of different stuff out there. You can, again, if you're interested, you can check out these blasting supply companies. I got this from Daryl and appreciate that just to play around with. So I'm going to cut out some shapes and put them on there. So I'm going to switch the camera again. Any questions on that so far?
So the resist you're going to put on the area that you don't want the sand to affect, right?
Yes. So I'll make a pattern and I'm going to blast the dark stuff will be blasted away. And when we come back, we'll have black, which was protected by the resist. If that makes sense.
Yep.
So I'll just make some. I'm going to switch here. How much of this you want to watch me do, but I'll just cut out some shapes. See if we, all right, so we'll make some leaf shapes. I'm not going to be very careful here. So this is just to take up time, right? So I can get to an hour. I found when I was playing around with this, this has adhesive on it, but if you have really small pieces, I've seen it gets blasted off pretty easy. So hopefully we'll get lucky here. Any questions while I'm cutting? This is probably a good time.
That's not a question, more of a comment, but I have a friend that does paper cuts, large, paper cut design type stuff. That would be kind of interesting to have a big, huge pattern on here.
I've heard you can put this stuff through like a vinyl cutter, and then you could have any CNC pattern or computer generated pattern you want, and then blast that pattern. These may be a little big for my area here, but I'll just put a couple on for. So I pulled off the plastic, and now I'm going to press it on there. If any of you watch This Old House, sometimes they have at the end of the show, they talk about different artists, and one of them was a glass artist, and she sandblasted all her designs, onto the glass. So she was cutting out very intricate, little pieces of this stuff and blasting the glass, and then so that was very cool. And so she was able to, have these stick on pretty well. All right, I'm going to really bear down on these. Okay, so over to the sandblast unit. All right, I am losing pressures and I don't have the compressor on, so we'll see how we do. All right, it's gonna be noisy for a little bit. Here we go. The other thing to do is probably wait a little bit before you open the door, kind of another safety item. And let all the dust settle down. All right, so going to table camera. And then I will pull off these guys and see what we have. I was really running out of power there because I hadn't built it up. So see what we got. So there is a ridge there. I don't know if you can see that. So it has excavated down and left the pattern there. And another, you could do this with color and then do the same thing. So, you know, for example, if I'd colored this ahead of time, you know, blasted around it, you'd end up with colored areas. But I'm not going to do that because I'm running out of power. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Probably wrap up here and see if there's any other questions.
Anybody got any questions? Okay, well, thanks a lot, Tom. That was a great demo. We really appreciate it. So everybody can go out and buy themselves a sandblaster, and next month show us what you did on show and tell.
There you go.
Get a hold of Tom if you have any other questions. Okay, well, let's move on. We've got some giveaways. Let's get through our giveaways. One other thing, Tom Penninga, you asked, I see your message about the veneer logs that you have. Tom Penninga has picked up a bunch of veneer logs from a place that they discard the logs after they cut the veneer off, and he had started out with over 50 of them. And how many do you have left there, Tom?
28, something like that.
Okay. And $5 a piece, right? They're $5 a piece if somebody wants some.
There's cedar, koa, walnut, and curly maple and bird's eye maple. And if people want them, I can get more of them.
Okay. If you still have a piece of that curly maple around that you'd sell me, I'll take another curly maple.
No, actually,
they're gone.
I have to go get more of that.
Okay. When you get more of that, let me know. Okay. Okay. So yeah, contact Tom if you want to get some, if you want to pick up some veneer logs from him. As a matter of fact, I was going to bring one down. I got it, one of each from him, and I turned something with the bird's eye maple, and it came out nice. The curly maple is beautiful. It was beautiful, and I did.
How big a diameter are they?
They vary. They turn on the veneer off till they start hitting the heartwood, and then they stop. So some of the koa were like probably 13 inches in diameter, and the curly maple was about 12 inches. The cedar goes from 5 to 8 maybe. The walnut is more like 3 or 4.
Yeah, the bird's eye maple too was about 8 inches.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to get a hold of Tom Penninga there, he can hook you up with some of those. We have a couple of them we're going to put in our store. So if you visit our store, I didn't get them on there earlier. Maybe I'll try and do it this afternoon. So you can check back and see what shows up in that store, because I'll try to add them this afternoon. And I see Bruce shared in our chat where you can get blast media, and you can also rent time on their blast cabinets, which I didn't realize you could do that. That's cool. So
yeah, it's actually a good way to try out if you want to own your own blast equipment. But their cabinets are gigantic, and of course they've got lots of compressed air, and they have the media there. And they'll even get you started in terms of doing the blasting. You know, so if you walked in the door and wanted to rent time, it's not very much. It's like, I don't know, I'm guessing, but up $25 an hour. And as you can see from Tom's demo, you can do a lot of blasting in an hour.
Where is this?
It's in Plainwell. You can look them up on. You all right, Tom?
I'm just dropped the set out of his ring.
They're in Plainwell. You can look them up on the web. I also put their address and phone number in that chat.
Okay.
So it's a good way to start out. And the problem with their media is they want to sell you bags that are probably 80 or 90 pounds.
Okay.
So in that sense, I don't know if he breaks down any bags or not and sells lower quantities.
So if you go there to rent time, do you have to pay for the media?
No, that
Okay.
includes the media.
It includes the media. You can just buy it for your own blast later. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay, great. Okay, let's do our last giveaways here. I have another AZ carbide certificate that I'm going to do. Let me get my wheel of wood turners up here. Let me see if I can. We'll do a spin here and try to give away the rest of these and see if we manage to get people who are in the room. Terry Leafers, I think you're here, right? Can somebody verify Terry's in the room? I seen him come. Is he still here? Terry must have left. I don't see him in the room anymore.
I don't think he is, Doug.
Okay, gotta be present to win. Here we go. Let's see, who is this? Daryl DeRider. I have not seen Daryl in the room. So Daryl has been removed. Moving on down. We're moving fast. If you're in the room and I think you're not, you better speak up quickly. Dwayne Friends. Are you in the room, Dwayne? Anybody see him in the room? No?
No.
Okay, here we go. And we have Tom McDonald. I have not seen him in the room. I do see that they're trying to kick off, the Woodworkers Guild trying to kick off their first meeting of the year next month. So all the woodworkers out there, you can catch him next month. Bruce Dannenhauer, is he in the room?
I am, but I got one a month ago.
Okay, you're going to pass on it?
Else. Yeah.
Okay, we appreciate that. All right, how about Ken Post? I did not see Ken Post in the room. Ken Post in the room? No?
No.
Okay, moving on. Bruce Sinkowski. I have not seen Bruce either. Is he in the room, Bruce?
See ya?
No.
No. Okay.
Bruce is not in the room? Okay. Here we go. John Marquardt. I don't think I've seen John here either. Is John in the room?
I don't think so.
Boy, we are going through people fast. Bill Barr. I have